Hello and welcome back aboard, and thank you for joining me once again for episode 19 of Steady as She Goes. First of all, a huge thank you to everybody who's been getting in touch over the past few weeks for the emails, messages, comments, suggestions, story ideas, photographs, and of course the kind words about the podcast. The response continues to grow every week and it really is appreciated. And for anybody that I haven't replied to just yet, don't worry, you're absolutely on the list and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Working through all the messages, and I genuinely appreciate every single one that comes in. If you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe and share Steady as She Goes wherever you listen, and sharing the podcast really helps us reach more people with an interest in maritime history, shipping, fishing, ferries, ports and life around the coast. Coming up on this episode, we'll be looking at the official launch of Hibernia Line and the new Cork to France ferry service, major developments at the Port of Cork, news of the sale of the ferry Stena Vinga, and the start of the 2026 cruise ship season around the Irish Sea and Irish Sea ports. We also remember the tragic final voyage of the RMS Lusitania on the 111th anniversary of her sinking off the Cork coast. And in Maritime Words of the Week, we explore the origins of one of the most familiar terms at sea, the ship's galley. So settle in wherever you're listening, at sea, ashore, in the wheelhouse, the office, or out walking the coast, and welcome aboard episode 19 of Steady as She Goes. And we start off this week with some news from around the coast, and the Hibernia Line has officially launched her new Cork to France ferry service. Some weeks ago here on Steady as She Goes, we brought you the breaking news that a brand new Irish ferry operator Hibernia Line was preparing to launch that direct maritime connection between Cork and mainland Europe. More recently, we updated listeners as plans continue to gather momentum, and now, as many of you will have already seen across the national and maritime media, Hibernia Line has officially launched its new service linking Ringaskiddy in Cork with Boulogne-sur-Mer in northern France. For Ireland's maritime sector, freight industry, tourism market, and indeed for Cork Harbour itself, this is a significant development. The new company, headquartered in Cork, plans to operate a year-round direct passenger and freight route between Ireland and France, with 6 sailings per week in each direction, beginning from mid-June of this year. At a time when direct European connectivity has become increasingly important following Brexit, Hibernia Line says its aim is simple: to provide a reliable, consistent and practical sea corridor between Ireland and continental Europe without the need for UK land transit. The service will operate from the Port of Cork's Ringaskiddy ferry terminal to Boulogne-sur-Mer, a major French port strategically positioned for access into northern France, Belgium, the Netherlands and the wider mainland Europe markets. The route itself has been designed around overnight convenience, so passengers departing Cork will board at approximately 2100 hours, settle into onboard accommodation and arrive in France the following evening, with sailings from Boulogne-sur-Mer departing at 2200 hours local time for the return crossing to Ireland. 2 RoPax vessels, the St. Patrick and the MV Akka, are expected to operate the route. The ships themselves are substantial passenger and freight ferries designed to cater for both tourism and commercial haulage. The St. Patrick reportedly offers around 193 cabins and approximately 2,200 lane metres of freight capacity, while the MV Akka has a capacity for 227 cabins and up to 2,500 lane metres of freight and vehicle space. So combined, the vessels are expected to carry over 600 passengers per sailing. Now, Hibernia Line says the route has been developed with both passenger comfort and freight efficiency in mind. For freight operators, the company is promoting the service as a dependable alternative to increasingly congested routes through Britain and other continental ferry ports. The company has also highlighted onboard driver welfare, including private cabin accommodation for freight drivers, something being described as an industry first approach on this type of service. Founder and CEO Aidan Coffey, who has experience across freight, shipping, and logistics sectors, said the emphasis is on consistency and reliability for both tourism and commercial traffic. The economic implications could also be substantial, of course, with Hibernia Line stating that the operation could create up to 250 jobs across Ireland and France, including approximately 200 crew positions. Some of those opportunities are expected to involve cadets from the National Maritime College of Ireland in Ringaskiddy, further strengthening Cork's growing role as a maritime education and transport hub. The company projects annual passenger numbers in excess of 250,000 people, alongside significant freight volumes moving directly between Ireland and mainland Europe. The official launch has been widely welcomed across political, tourism, and maritime sectors. The Port of Cork described the service as an important strengthening of Ireland's direct European links and a valuable addition to the country's freight and tourism infrastructure. French officials also welcomed the announcement as another important maritime bridge between Ireland and France, further reinforcing the long historical and cultural relationship between both countries. For Cork Harbour itself, already one of the world's great natural harbours with deep maritime traditions, the launch represents another major chapter in its long shipping story. For decades, Cork has served as one of Ireland's principal maritime gateways connecting the south of Ireland to Britain, continental Europe, and the wider world. The addition of a new year round continental service strengthens that role at a time when secure maritime trade routes are more important than ever. And for passengers, the appeal is obvious: a direct sea crossing from Ireland into northern France, which offers holidaymakers, hauliers, and business travellers another option beyond airports, connecting directly into Europe with cabins, overnight travel, vehicle access, and without the complications of transiting through Britain. Bookings for passengers are already open through the company's website, with freight bookings expected to follow. So, after months of speculation, announcements, and growing anticipation, Hibernia Line is now officially underway, and Cork Harbour is once again preparing to welcome a major new European ferry connection. It will certainly be an interesting development to watch over the months and years ahead. And, it really is fantastic to see an Irish person in Aidan Coffey as CEO, an Irish name and an Irish company with Hibernia Line, and also that link to the National Maritime College of Ireland. We regularly discuss and talk here about our connection to the sea and our lack of direct connection between our seafarers and our ships. And here we have now what seems to be, from the very outset, a real strong effort at linking those things together. So, well done to all concerned, and the very, very best of luck to Hibernia as they begin this exciting new chapter in Ireland's maritime history. Now, staying with South Coast port news this week, there have been additional significant developments at the Port of Cork company, and they've highlighted the port's growing importance both nationally and internationally. Firstly, the port has officially launched its new corporate strategy for 2026 to 2030, a major roadmap that sets out the port's vision and priorities for the next 5 years. As a Tier 1 port of national significance and a core TENT European transport port, Cork says that the new strategy focuses on four key pillars: infrastructure, people, business, and the planet. Now, the plan outlines ambitions to expand port capacity, strengthen international connectivity, modernise operations, support workforce development, and continue advancing sustainability initiatives across the organisation. Port officials say the overall aim is to create what they describe as a world-class port of the future, while continuing to connect Cork and Ireland safely and sustainably to global markets. And that international connectivity has already received a major boost this week with the official launch of the Port of Cork first ever direct transatlantic container service to New York in partnership with CMA-CGM. The inaugural sailing departed Cork aboard the container vessel MV CMA CGM Luga as part of the new weekly Panama direct service linking Cork directly with key ports on the US East Coast, including New York and Savannah in Georgia. The new route is being seen as a landmark development for Irish shipping and trade, offering significantly faster transit times, approximately 9 days to New York and 11 days to Savannah, while eliminating the need for feeder connections through major European hub ports. The Port of Cork says that direct service will strengthen Ireland's global supply chain connectivity, create new opportunities for exporters and importers, and further enhance transatlantic trade links between Ireland and the United States. So, taken together, both announcements underline Cork's continued growth as one of Ireland's most strategically important maritime gateways and reinforce the port's ambitions to position itself at the centre of future international trade and sustainable shipping development. And when we look at Ireland now as a country, we see Cork really driving on with those announcements and of course the launch of Hibernia Line. We see Waterford and New Ross very busy, and we'll be getting an update very shortly in the next couple of weeks from Michael Cusick about trade up and down to Waterford and New Ross. We have Rosslare operating probably at capacity at this stage. There's very few slots that are not filled at Rosslare. We have Wicklow, which we'll hear from Tommy Dover on this episode, busy with coastal trade. Dublin is developing further ferry terminals, and there's a lot going on in the maritime sector, and it's great to see that investment and that push forward now in the maritime trade. And as I said there in the piece about Cork, eliminating some of those connections through Europe. We're standing on our own 2 feet. We're linking ourselves directly with the US market rather than having to send cargo through Europe and then west to the US. So hats off to everybody. There seems to be a big push towards developing and that maritime sector and the port infrastructure. So let's hope that that continues to drive on now and push Ireland forward to a place where it should be in the maritime world. Now for some ferry news, and there are reports that Stena Line has agreed to sell its ferry MV Stena Vinga to the Danish operator DFDS. The vessel, which is currently operating on DFDS services between Jersey, the UK and France under charter, is expected to officially transfer to DFDS ownership later this year and will reportedly be renamed and reflagged under the British flag. Built in 2005 and originally named Hammer Road, the 125-metre Ropax ferry has had a varied career across European waters before joining the Stena Line fleet in 2018 as Stena Vinga. The vessel can carry around 400 passengers, 200 cars, and approximately 1,500 lane metres of freight. Onboard facilities include cabins, lounges, restaurant areas, a cinema, and duty-free shopping. The ship will be familiar to many ferry enthusiasts and regular Irish sea travellers, particularly in Rosslare, as Stena Vinga occasionally relieved on the Rosslare to Fishguard ferry route service over the years during refits and vessel fleet movements within the wider Stena network. Although never a permanent fixture on the route, her appearances into Rosslare Europort were always of interest to ship followers due to her distinctive profile and a smaller size compared with some of the larger vessels operating across the Irish Sea. Now, DFDS says the acquisition strengthens its long-term commitment to its Channel Islands operations, where the vessel has reportedly performed well since entering service there in 2025. The company also says the move will support future fleet resilience and create additional maritime employment opportunities, including cadet and apprentice positions. So another familiar ferry name now appears set to disappear from the Stena Line fleet, and for many around Rosslare and the Irish Sea ferry community, Stena Vinga will certainly be remembered as a distinctive relief vessel and familiar visitor to Irish waters over the years. Now, with summertime upon us, the cruise ship season is now well underway around the Irish coast and across the Irish Sea, with ports from Cork to Belfast already welcoming some of the world's best known cruise vessels for what promises to be another busy tourism season. In Port of Cork, company officials say 93 cruise ship calls are scheduled between April and October this year, making it the largest cruise schedule in the Republic of Ireland once again. A number of major vessels have already visited Cork Harbour in recent weeks, with many more due throughout the summer season as cruise tourism continues to grow strongly around the Irish coast. Further north, Belfast Harbour is preparing for one of its busiest cruise seasons yet, with an extensive schedule featuring some of the biggest names in global cruising. Among the vessels already visiting or due into Belfast over the coming weeks and months are the Majestic Princess, Celebrity Eclipse, MSC Preziosa, the Norwegian Sky, Queen Anne, Carnival Legend, and the increasingly familiar Mein Schiff 2. Smaller expedition and luxury cruise vessels are also making regular calls, including ships from Viking, Ponan, Seabourn, Silver Sea, Oceania, and Regent Seven Seas. Over in Wales, Fishguard Port has also begun welcoming cruise traffic for the season, with vessels including the Ada Luna, the La Pruse, the Seabourn Ovation, and Ada Sol among those scheduled to call. Meanwhile, Port of Holyhead continues to position itself as a growing cruise destination alongside its major ferry operations, with facilities capable of handling cruise ships up to 300 metres in length there. And in the Dublin area, Dunleary Harbour is expecting another busy season, bringing thousands of passengers and crew into the region and providing a significant boost for local tourism and hospitality businesses. So, after another long winter around the coast, the sight of cruise ships returning to Irish seaports once again is a sure sign that summer maritime season has officially begun. And if you're thinking of heading to the coast or visiting one of the ports over the coming months, it's well worth checking the cruise schedules online beforehand. You may get the opportunity to see one of these huge and very impressive vessels up close. We're very fortunate around Ireland and the Irish Sea that many cruise ships still berth directly alongside, allowing excellent public views for ship enthusiasts, photographers, and visitors alike. While operations in Dublin have changed somewhat in recent years, with many vessels now anchoring offshore at Dunleary, they still provide a spectacular sight in the bay for anyone with an interest in maritime activity. So, if you're planning a summer day out by the sea, it may be worth timing your visit with one of the scheduled cruise ship calls. And finally, on news from around the coast this week, from huge ocean liners to the majestic beauty of the local craft. And it's regatta time once again for the Wexford Cot sailors, with the first race of the 2026 season taking place on Saturday, the 16th of May at the Borough in Rosslare. Starting time is 18:30, and another great season of traditional sailing is expected on the waters of Wexford Harbour and the south coast. The Wexford Sailing Cot is one of the country's most distinctive traditional boats, with roots deeply tied to the fishing and maritime heritage of the harbour and the estuary. These unique, locally built craft were developed over generations to work the shallow tidal waters around Wexford and remain an important part of the county's living maritime culture today. Cod racing continues to preserve that tradition, combining seamanship, local knowledge, and community spirit in a way that links the modern cruise directly with Wexford's rich coastal past. So we wish all crews taking part the very best of luck for the season ahead. And if you're in the Rosslare area on Saturday evening, it promises to be a fantastic opportunity to see these beautiful traditional boats under sail once again. And keep an eye out on the Borough Rosslare Memorial page, or indeed the Wexford Cot Sailing page, for further dates of upcoming races down there in the borough in Rosslare. And well done to everyone involved for keeping this tradition alive and well. Now, this week on Steady as She Goes, we're shining a light on the importance of the work of an organisation called L.A.S.T, L-A.S.T, which stands for Lost at Sea Tragedies. And this is a charity founded within Ireland's fishing community to support families affected by tragedy, hardship, and loss at sea. Established in 2013 by former fisherman the late Noel McDonagh of Dunmore East, following the tragic loss of the three Bulger brothers, L.A.S.T was created to provide immediate emotional and financial support to grieving families in the aftermath of maritime tragedies. The charity also highlights the harsh realities facing many fishing communities around Ireland. Fishing can be an unpredictable and precarious way of life, with livelihoods depending on weather, fish prices, quotas, and seasonal conditions. Many fishermen, particularly within the inshore fleet, face serious financial pressure, debt, injuries, ill health, and isolation. Retired fishermen are also among the occupational groups most at risk of poverty. Now, L.A.S.T works to provide a vital support network through bereavement counselling, welfare assistance, debt and relationship counselling, addiction support, medical assistance, and practical help for elderly and vulnerable members of coastal communities. The organisation also continues to promote safety awareness throughout the fishing industry while helping to ensure that families affected by tragedy at sea are not left to cope alone. So, a fantastic organisation that is L.A.S.T, and I would encourage you to have a look at their Facebook page for upcoming events and past fundraisers to get an insight into the excellent work of that organisation. So, folks, for this next part now of Steady as She Goes, I'm delighted to say that we're joined once again by Tommy Dover of Wicklow Maritime. And it's been a while since we first heard from Tommy with all the busyness that's going on in the maritime world at both ends of the East Coast. We've struggled to catch up with Tommy, but delighted to say he's back with us. Now, you're very welcome back aboard Steady as She Goes, Tommy.
Thanks very much, Sean. Nice to be here.
Excellent, good stuff. And look at it's been busy up and down the coast there, Tommy, and Wicklow has been no different. And I think you have a little bit of a summary prepared for us from what's been going on for the last month or so there, have you?
Yeah, I have, Sean. We had the usual callers, the coastal callers to Wicklow in April. We had Scott Pioneer and Scott Oils. They're Scott Line ships. They bring in packaged timber from Varberg in Sweden. You know, the Scott Line, the ships have been coming to Wicklow since 1987, so I think we can call them fairly frequent.
They're nearly local now. They probably have Wicklow accents,
Yeah,
do
yeah.
they?
We've watched the company build up into sort of small ships into high capacity ships now, you know, which is nice.
That's quite unusual for a company to be running for that length of time, nearly 30 years
Yeah.
at this stage now. Like you get long-term charters or contracts or whatever, but that's a really long one in the modern era where things tend to chop and change quite a lot. So they really are locals now at this stage.
Well, that's it, yeah. And then the other two ships, the Riki B and the Hilda B, they arrived in from Sweden and Finland with packaged timber. They're operated now by the Danish-based company Echo Ship.
Oh yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah, they're under the Cypriot flag, but they were renamed a couple of years ago, and they were under the Netherlands flag before that. So that they've sort of changed their names, but they still they've been calling for the past 15 years as well.
Yeah, more regular callers. Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's a couple of tankers under the Echo name as well. There's one called the Echo Marina del Rey, and I'm not sure if that's a part of the same company or not, but it certainly has the same naming system,
Yeah,
like you know.
yeah, and then we had two first-time callers, which I was able to add to the Wicklow Maritime archive, and that was the first one was the Rix Eleonora.
Yeah,
She arrived in from Waterford to load scrap metal for Portugal.
very good.
She's registered in Madeira under the Portuguese international flag,
Yeah.
and she's operated by the Baltic Shipping Company. This was her first call, and she's one of those Rhine class coasters built in Slovakia.
Oh
There's
yes,
about
yeah.
73 of them, I think, built between the late 90s for about 10 years, but they're still on the go. But she was the ex Eve Maria Muller,
Oh
beautiful
yes.
ship. You know, but I like those type of ships. And we also had another first time caller was the Lady Harriet. She's operated by Win and Berens in the Netherlands.
And they were
Uh, sh-
both in for scrap, were they?
no, the Rick Eleanor loaded scrap, but the Lady Harriet, she called with round packaged timber from Finland.
Very good. And the
She's a
scrap,
beautiful
where was
ship.
the scrap heading out for with the Rick ship? Where was
Uh,
she bound
s-
for? Do you remember, Tommy?
she was going to Setúbal in Portugal.
All right, okay. So
Yeah,
Portuguese flagged going back to Portugal, yeah.
yeah, we get cargoes go from either Liverpool, Spain, or Portugal. So it's one of the three. But the Lady Harriet, she arrived to discharge timber from Finland. Now she's a H class in the company's series. She's built in India in 2021.
All right.
Yeah, she's 98 meters long, so she was nearly the full length of the packet pier.
Yeah, that's a good length. And I haven't seen too many Indian built ships around, I must admit. So that's an
Yeah,
unusual as well.
yeah, there is. But she now was that's the second type, the H type we've had in Wicklow. We had the Lady Hester last year, her sister.
Yeah.
And that's sort of that's the six ships we had in during the month. But we also it was busy in the bay. We had two ships in the bay as well. We had the Granuaile.
Oh
She
yeah.
spent she spent a couple of days doing buoy maintenance along the coast.
I
And
noticed that she's been up and down the east coast a good bit. She was
yeah,
anchored off Rosslare a lot recently, and even as late as yesterday, which is yeah Sunday, last Sunday actually, yeah, she was down off the Tusker there, and she was doing a bit. And our listeners will remember, of course, our great interview with Dermot Gray, recently retired
that was
from the Granuaile, and that sparked a lot of interest. But it's nice to see the Granuaile back on the East Coast after a busy year elsewhere.
yes, it is good. And she anchored in the bay for a couple of occasions during the month as well. And we also had the research vessel Tom Crean in the bay.
Oh, very good, excellent. That
Yeah, so
ties in nicely with our last episode, actually, when we
yeah,
spoke about the amazing voyage up from Elephant Island. So the
yeah,
ships seem to be following the podcast at this stage.
yeah. Well, that's it. Well, yeah, and two nicely named ships. I mean, Tom Crean is sort of a hero for everyone, and the podcast was quite a good way of learning more about them. But
Yeah, I was delighted when they named that ship to Tom Crane. I must admit, I remember
yeah,
at the time there was a bit of a campaign on social media, and I thought it would have been terrible not to have named at this stage, after all this time, not to have named a ship, but specifically a research vessel. I think it was very
yeah.
important. So fair play for that. Like,
Well, one of our Wicklow Maritime Facebook contributors, Willie Byrne, he's a big fan of Tom Crane, so he was delighted too.
brilliant. Yeah, yeah. I think there
So
was
I
a lot of
texted him and said she was in the bay and go and have a look.
nice, fair play, fair play.
We also had some activity. What would you call it? A work vessel towing a barge.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
and this was going. It loaded two cargoes in Arklow during the month. Rock armor from the
Okay.
Roadstone jetty, and they were destined for a project at Greencastle in County Donegal.
Oh, very good. So Irish stone being brought back up to a different part of the country to
Yeah,
be used. That's very good.
and like using the sea and the barge, it took an awful lot of trucks off the road, which would have been sort of which was is quite a
Absolutely.
good way of doing it. And let's hope that was the old way. Let's hope that continues in the future. That was
Yeah, I
nice.
certainly concur with that sentiment. I think that's what that's what the waterways used to be used for long ago,
Yeah,
and that's why I think that coastal trade in and out of the likes of Wicklow is so important, because it gets the stuff to where it needs to be, rather than the Ryanair model that gets you kind of where you needs to be and then has to
yeah.
drive for hours
Well,
on end. Yeah.
well, that's it. There was a few other cargoes earlier on in March went to Dublin for I think it was around the North Wall. There was some uh, civil engineering there. There was some rock armor put around the North Wall. I'd seen some photos on Facebook. So that was more cargoes going from Arklow to Dublin, which was
Brilliant.
nice as well.
And that's
And I'm
really
just
that's a really good one for cutting down the trucks off the road. The fact that it's only going that short distance from Arklow to
exactly.
Dublin, like, yeah.
Exactly, so it's nice, and then in the bay we also we have ferry traffic in the bay every other day. We see the WB8s in the Isle of Inisheer.
Yeah.
They're in the bay working on the Irish ferries, Dublin Cherbourg route. So we have ferry activity, so people get to see and know the times of the ferries too, which is nice.
Absolutely. The WB8 is a fair monstrosity on the
Oh,
horizon.
she's
She's huge,
yeah,
like, yeah.
yeah, really nice. And then we also spotted and logged new ships on the Irish Sea. The first one was the Rika J. She's a 154 meter container ship.
Very
and
good.
she's running into Dublin from Europe, Rotterdam, things like that. But she's unusual, not unusual, but she's her accommodation and wheelhouse are at the bow.
Oh, very good.
So
Yes, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That different style. Yeah, you normally you think they were going astern when you see them first, like because everything is the other way around. Yeah, they are quite
yeah,
unusual.
yeah, and she's been joined by another ship. It's a red hulled. It's the Hera. She's
Yes,
another
yeah.
container ship. So they're two new ships. And just before we come on here, I was just looking out the window and I seen the Tun Renew, which you were talking about on the podcast.
I was just about to ask you, had you seen her actually? So there you go. That's good timing. Yeah,
Yeah, she
she's
eluded me.
she's very new. Obviously, she's brand new. Recently deployed to the Milford Haven. All the Irish ports will see her eventually. I did hear that initially she's going to operate with jet fuel only, and then see how the demand is for other products going forward. And as far as I know, she's to be joined very shortly by another one, possibly the Tun Resolve. But also, I was speaking to one of the captains on the Ton Genius the other day. I believe the Gemini is already on her way, and she'll be followed then by the Genius, and they're being sold to Greek owners. And
Oh, very
and he
good.
was saying that he thinks they're going to be bunker barges. And for anyone that has seen these the G class, which we're talking about now, from afar or up close, they are absolutely immaculately kept.
Yeah,
And the reason they're being sold is because of their age and because of certification issues with tankers of that age. But these ships are absolutely pristine. So for bunker barges and bunkering vessels down in the Mediterranean, I think they'll have a long life down there because they're so well kept. They're built really strongly, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I hope whoever gets them now looks after them as well as the crews that have been on them, mainly Filipino crews on those ton ships, and Filipino and European officers and captains. So it's nice to see the likes of the Ton Renew coming in, new tonnage, but it's also nice to kind of say cheerio to the other ones, you know.
yeah. Yeah, we also have sometimes last night I seen the two L classes. I think it was the Lundy and the London, Tun London. They were passing one another in Wicklow Bay as well. So
And they're
busy
very, very
ships.
busy ships. Yeah, the G ships often get maybe a night or two at anchor, either at Dublin or maybe if they're heading down around the south coast. The L ships are actually too big for Galway, but the L ships themselves very rarely get a break. They're normally load discharge, load discharge. So they're busy, busy ships, and of course only for them, on that frequent product trade. That's what keeps the cars and the lorries going and the jets flying in the sky because
Exactly.
it's all the product comes in with them. But it's nice to be able to see them going in and out of Dublin from your point of view as well, of course.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's very nice. We see a lot of there's a lot of other tankers too, which for anyone that's into tankers, there's a huge variety going through the bay.
Massive
And
amount, yeah.
yeah, so the Tun Renew was great. I couldn't believe when I seen it before I come on here.
Perfect timing, yeah.
Yeah, because it eluded me every time I tried to see it. I was in work and I couldn't get out.
Yeah, right on time.
Yeah, and then just back to Wicklow. I'll just finish off. Over the weekend, we had a visit by the work vessel AMS Retriever.
Oh yes, I saw that on the page, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, she's actually it's operated by a company Alpha Marine based in Wicklow,
And what
and
was she up to, Tommy?
she's the last time I seen on Facebook during the weekend, she was towing a jack-up rig into Cork.
Right.
Now she's on her way to a job, so I think to just stop in here when they're on the way. We've seen her twice in the last few months. While we like to see her when she drops in when they're on the way to a job.
Ah,
So
fair play, yeah.
so it's nice. But
This
she's
time of the year
she's
now,
a
you see a lot of that kind of tug and tow stuff going on up and down the Irish Sea with various projects getting back underway after the winter period, or maybe just starting up for a longer period during the summer. Like,
yeah, they do a lot of work. It's a busy company, Alpha Marine, and they have two other workboats in the harbour here as well. They do work on the offshore sector as well.
yes, yeah, very good.
And we had today. Now we had the Rix Eleonora returned over the weekend, and she's currently loading scrap metal in Wicklow again. So it's her second call.
Fair play.
And expected list, we have the Larissa B due as well this week. So she's due in from Sweden, I think, with timber as well.
And the
So
package timber, Tommy, when that arrives, then is that's discharged ashore and is it collected later, or is it discharged directly to trucks, and does it head off to some depot, or does it stay locally, or what happens that when it gets discharged?
The local agents, Conway Shipping, have a yard on the
Right.
Murray. You'll see it if you're ever traveling on the Rosslare Dublin train, you'll see it as you just outside Wicklow, and it's
Yeah.
distributed. Then they have a fleet of trucks, and also trucks come to collect as well. So
And does
that's
that go directly from their yards then off to direct to site, or do you know, or does it go to the likes of
I
Chadwick's and
think this
places like that?
I think it goes to the distributors. Then
Right. Okay. Yeah.
it's quite a big operation. It's
I'd imagine
for
so.
for Wicklow, for the size of it. There's a huge amount of timber. Most of the houses, in the country, the timber probably originates from Wicklow.
Yeah, and I suppose more and more now, it's not just the roof anymore that's timber. There's so many houses now are timber framed, like so.
Yeah.
The demand for that packaged timber will be there for a long time. So I expect Wicklow will be busy with that trade going forward, which is can only be a good thing for the harbour itself.
Oh yeah, that's and long may it continue. Like it was when I first started taking photos back in the 80s. The timber was coming in. It was companies like Everards were bringing in timber, and
Yeah,
then Scotland were sort of dipping their toes in it as well. So it's built up over the years.
fair play.
Uh, And then we've had a busy time. Our lifeboat had a couple of call outs. Had one over the weekend, but I had a notable one on the bank holiday. The pagers went off around 11:30 at night, I think, on the Friday night, and the lifeboat was launched to a yacht with two people on board, but it was dismasted about 10 miles offshore, which
That's
I'm
a
sure
fairly
is
hairy shout then.
every sailor's nightmare when you lose a mast.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
the crew, being professional like they are, were out very quickly and had them back safely alongside the East Pier by about, I think, 2 a.m. in the morning on the Saturday morning.
So did a decent shout then on a bank holiday weekend. It's always the way this
Yeah,
time of the
yeah.
year,
So
yeah.
they're always ready to continuously. They're just before I come in as well. They're out training today as well. So it's great to see them. Even the new generation of crew are coming up.
Very good. And the Shannon class has settled in well at Wicklow. It seems to be getting a very popular class of boat now for the RNLI. I've heard a couple of announcements recently of more stations that they're going to deploy Shannons to. I think they're replacing most of the Trents with Shannons, and then they're also putting Shannons in other stations as well. So it's
Yeah.
the lads are getting on well with theirs anyway.
Oh, very good. And I've seen a Shannon, one of the high numbers on its way to the UK overnight at Arklow quite recently. I seen on a Facebook post the lifeboat crew are thanking the crew for the hospitality in Arklow as well.
That's
So
right. I think she'd been in Rosslare as well, and then she popped up to Arklow and then headed. She was heading up to one of the Scottish ports, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's good to see the RNLI keeping that investment going into the fleet. Because shouts are different nowadays. They're people are more prepared and better prepared, which is great to see. Obviously, so they may not have as many shouts in the year, but the RNLI are continuing to invest and make sure the stations are well manned, well trained, and then have the craft to go out and do the work, which is great.
exactly, yeah, that's it. It is. It's fantastic. Also too, and I was just looking today as the lifeboat was going out. I was watching Pat Davis. He's on the East Pier, touching up one of the murals there he's done. So he's with the sunshine now. He's out. He's finished off a couple in the last few weeks. I think the bad weather in the last few weeks have hampered his progress, but the good weather in the last few days, well, not too bad, has got him out. So he's at work there. So if anyone is in and around the harbour, do have a look on the East Pier. You'll see him every day. He's always there. So just say
Fair
hello
play.
and
I was keeping an eye on him there actually on the Facebook, and it was almost as soon as the clocks changed and the sun came out, Pat had a photograph, or somebody had a photograph of Pat on the pier there doing the murals, and they're just amazing really. And we've been talking about it at the centre here, about when we do make our plans to go up to Wicklow, we want to make sure that the Pat is one of the lads we have a chat to and meet, and a
Exactly,
few of our
exactly.
members are looking forward to going up and sharing that artwork, because it's really nice, and it's such a nice idea. Like, and do a lot of people know about it, Tommy? Do you get many visitors coming to see it, or is it a little bit unknown still? What
No,
way?
it's quite he is well known. He some filmmaker made a film and show they had a screening a couple of weeks ago
Oh,
and
lovely.
yeah, so that film was going into some film festival.
Right.
But I won't say anything about it until they find it. But it's worth watching. It's beautifully filmed, and it gives a really good what could I say a really good reflection of what he wanted to achieve, and
Brilliant.
it's beautifully filmed. I mean, the camera crew, I can only say, it's just majestic to see, and
Brilliant.
I won't ruin it by saying what, but just it's worth seeing.
We'll keep
You
an eye
know.
out for that then. So that's going into a festival, and then it'll be on general release, is it?
Yeah, and I believe I've heard there's a second crew making a film as well. So
Wow, that's fantastic.
yeah, yeah. So it's
And that
it's a,
really
it's a good
shines a
legacy for
light.
him.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was just going to say. It and it's so often that people like Pat do all that kind of work, and whether it be artwork or research or whatever it might be, in the maritime sector, and after they're gone, then, oh, we should have done this or we should have done that. So it's
Yeah,
fantastic that that's getting highlighted now, and it's recorded then forever. So
it is.
we'll have to
Yeah,
keep an eye on that. You might let us know when that's coming out, and we'll be able to
yeah.
tell the listeners about it. And in the meantime, we look forward to meeting Pat anyway, like, because he seems to be a good character as well, by all
Oh
accounts.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You'll have a nice day there, and it's right beside the lifeboat station too. So it's
Brilliant.
really it's a lovely walk out. You're going in for me walking out there. I'm going through what would you say? It's like a time capsule. I'm just seeing ships all the way through life.
Lovely.
It's really good, and it was started off in about 50 years ago.
Yeah,
People can find he has a page. I think it's on Instagram. Pat Davis murals on the East Pier or something like that.
lovely. We
To
have to
find
check
him,
that out.
yeah, it's really good. And he puts up blog posts every few weeks about the paintings. And I do believe that there is, and he will be making an announcement very soon about some other project that's coming up very soon as well. So
Excellent. God, you've loads
yes,
of news for us, Tommy. That's great
oh,
stuff.
very good.
Yeah, we're on the edge of our seats here with stuff coming down from Wicklow. It's fantastic. Like, it really
We're
is.
looking forward to seeing his up here. It's really
Absolutely,
nice.
yeah, yeah. We
You
would
know.
definitely be making some plans now over the next few weeks. And back to the shipping, then. You have a few more ships, obviously, as you mentioned, a couple due in the next few days. But it sounds like things are busy, and they're going to remain so.
Yeah, hopefully. I see too, also round timber. There hasn't been a round timber ship. The Seg Universe, I think, was off. She was in dry dock. I know she's
Right.
back on service, but I see they're staging a cargo down on the North Quay. So hopefully we'll see her back. I've missed her for the last few weeks. She was like the penny. She always turned up. She was
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
nice ship, and it's just in and out, and but just always part of the furniture in Wicklow.
Ah,
So
good stuff. Yeah,
it's
it'd be
quite
good to
nice.
see her back, all freshened up after her period in dry dock, which of course is very important to keep the ships going. Excellent, Tommy. Well, listen, it's fantastic once again to get another update from Wicklow. It's busy both ashore and afloat. It sounds like,
Oh
and you're
yes.
you're all doing plenty of good work up there to preserve the maritime history and heritage between yourself and all the lads up there. So it's fantastic to hear. And as I say, we look forward to doing a recording on location very, very soon up there with you in Wicklow. But for the time being, keep up the fantastic work, Ollie up there. It's really, really great to hear about all the things that are going on, and that's just apart from the commercial shipping side of things. So it's a credit to you all, fair play, and we'll hopefully catch up with you soon, Tommy.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed
Cheers,
it.
Tommy.
Lovely. Thank
Steady as
you.
she goes. Cheers now. And thanks once again to Tommy there in Wicklow. It's always good to catch up with people around the coast, and Tommy and the gang up there in Wicklow are certainly keeping the maritime traditions up and running, and it's great to hear the enthusiasm from the likes of Tommy there, watching all the movements in and out of Wicklow Harbour, and of course down as far as Arklow and further north in Dublin. So thanks to Tommy, and we look forward to speaking to the Wicklow crew again very soon. Now, on a calm spring afternoon off the coast of County Cork, one of the most shocking maritime disasters of the 20th century unfolded in Irish waters. At 2:10 on the afternoon of the 7th of May 1915, the great Cunard liner RMS Lusitania was struck by a torpedo fired from the German submarine U-20. Just 18 minutes later, the ship vanished beneath the Atlantic, approximately 11 miles off the old head of Kinsale. Nearly 1,200 people lost their lives. More than a century later, Lusitania still occupies a unique place in maritime history, not simply because of the scale of the tragedy, but because of the human stories, unanswered questions, wartime controversy, and haunting final moments that continue to echo across generations. Before the disaster, Lusitania was one of the most famous ships in the world. Operated by the Cunard Line, she was celebrated for her speed, luxury, and reliability. At over 780 feet long and capable of more than 25 knots, she was known as one of the greyhounds of the Atlantic. Wealthy passengers, immigrants, businessmen, entertainers, politicians, and ordinary travellers all crossed aboard her between Liverpool, Queenstown, and New York. But by 1915, the world had changed. Europe was engulfed in the First World War. German submarines had begun targeting ships around the British Isles, and the seas around Ireland had become a dangerous war zone. Weeks before Lusitania sailed on what would become her final voyage, Germany public warned that British ships entering those waters could be destroyed. In one of history's most chilling newspaper notices, the German embassy in Washington warned passengers: "Travellers sailing in the war zone on the ships of Great Britain or her allies do so at their own risk." The warning appeared beside advertisements for Lusitania's sailing from New York on the 1st of May 1915. Some passengers cancelled their bookings, others ignored the warning entirely. Many believed the threat was little more than propaganda. After all, Lusitania was fast, very fast, and Captain William Thomas Turner reportedly dismissed the idea that any submarine could successfully attack her. Yet unease lingered around the ship before departure. Some prominent passengers allegedly received anonymous telegrams warning them not to sail. Rumours circulated along the New York waterfront. Still, just after noon on Saturday the 1st of May, Lusitania slipped away from Pier 54 and began crossing number 202, which would be her final Atlantic voyage. There was little sign aboard of the horror to come. Passengers attended concerts and dinner parties. Children played on deck beneath the great funnels. Wealthy travellers gathered in the lavish saloons, while immigrants crowded the lower decks, dreaming of new beginnings. War correspondent Ernest Cowpower moved between classes, interviewing passengers about the conflict raging across Europe. Actress Rita Jolivet socialized among the theatre crowd. Millionaire Alfred Vanderbilt travelled quietly aboard. Theatre producer Charles Frohman hosted conversations in elegant cabins as the ship rolled west to east across the Atlantic. Yet beyond the polished brass, fine dining, and Edwardian luxury, war shadowed the voyage. German U-boats had already sunk numerous vessels south of Ireland in the days before the Lusitania approached the coast. Survivors from attacked merchant ships attempted to warn authorities. Messages circulated between naval offices, yet many aboard Lusitania remained unaware how close danger truly was. As the ship neared Ireland on the 6th of May, Captain Turner began implementing wartime precautions. The ship darkened at night. Extra lookouts were posted. Lifeboats were swung out in readiness. Passengers were instructed not to smoke on deck after dark, lest glowing cigarettes reveal the ship's position to lurking submarines. Even then, life aboard retained an eerie normality. The charity concert took place in the first class lounge. Welsh songs echoed through the ship. Couples celebrated anniversaries. One young couple, who had met aboard, reportedly became engaged and planned to marry once they reached Liverpool. Meanwhile, beneath the Atlantic, U-20 hunted. The submarine's commander, Captain Lieutenant Walter Schweiger, had already sunk several vessels off the coast of Ireland. On the morning of 7th of May, U-20 lay waiting in waters south of Cork as Lusitania approached the Irish coast through fog and calm seas. At around 11 o'clock in the morning, Captain Turner received warnings that submarines were active off the southern coast. Believing danger lay further offshore, he brought Lusitania closer toward land. Passengers crowded the portside decks as Ireland finally appeared on the horizon. For many aboard, it must have felt as though the danger had passed. The weather improved, the sea was calm. The lighthouse at the old head of Kinsale stood visible in the distance. Some passengers later remarked how beautiful the afternoon appeared, only moments before disaster struck. But unseen beneath those calm waters, U-20 had already sighted the liner. At approximately 2 in the afternoon, lookouts aboard Lusitania spotted the white trail of a torpedo racing toward the starboard side. A cry rang out, "Torpedo coming on the starboard side!" Seconds later, the torpedo slammed into the ship beneath the bridge. Survivors described a towering column of water and debris erupting skyward. Then came something even more terrifying, a second explosion deep within the ship. To this day, historians continue debating the cause of that second blast. Some believed it resulted from ruptured steam lines or coal dust ignition. Others argued the ship carried undeclared war materials. Whatever caused it, witnesses agreed the second explosion accelerated the destruction dramatically. Almost immediately, Lusitania began listing heavily to starboard. Captain Turner ordered the ship turned toward the Irish coast in hopes of beaching her, but steering systems failed. Steam pressure collapsed. The giant liner no longer answered her helm. Passengers struggled to comprehend what was happening. Some calmly searched for lifebelts. Others became trapped below decks as power failed and elevators stopped between floors. Bulkhead doors jammed shut. Crew members fought desperately to launch lifeboats as the ship's severe list made many impossible to lower safely. Chaos spread quickly. On the high side of the ship, lifeboats swung inward against the hull. On the low side, terrified passengers faced enormous drops into boats hanging far below them. Some lifeboats overturned during launching, others spilled passengers directly into the sea. Yet amid the terror came extraordinary acts of humanity. Millionaire Alfred Vanderbilt reportedly handed his life jacket to a woman carrying a child, despite being unable to swim himself. Theatre producer Charles Frohman remained remarkably calm as the ship sank around him. According to survivors, he remarked, "Why fear death? It is the most beautiful adventure in life." Passengers helped strangers with lifebelts. Crewmen continued loading boats even as the decks tilted steeply beneath their feet. Parents searched desperately for children in the confusion. Wireless operators Robert Leith and Donald McCormack sent urgent SOS signals toward Queenstown, now Cove, while rescue vessels rushed from the Irish coast. But the sea was unforgivingly cold, as Lusitania was dying far too quickly. Only 6 lifeboats were successfully launched properly. As water surged across the decks, panic intensified. Some passengers jumped into the Atlantic, others remained aboard, believing the ship might stabilize. It never did. The bow plunged deeper beneath the waves, while the stern slowly rose behind it. Captain Turner remained at his post until the final moments. According to accounts, as water reached the bridge, he simply told Quartermaster Hugh Johnston, "Save yourself." At approximately 14:28, just 18 minutes after being torpedoed, the great liner disappeared beneath the sea. The speed of the sinking shocked the world. Of the 1,960 people aboard, 1,197 perished, including 128 Americans. Entire families vanished together. 94 children lost their lives, hundreds drowned in sight of the Irish coast, while local fishing boats, trawlers, and rescue craft raced desperately toward the scene. For the people of Cork and nearby coastal communities, the aftermath was unforgettable. Bodies washed ashore for days afterwards. Survivors were brought into Queenstown, where hotels, homes, churches, and public buildings became makeshift relief centres. Mortuaries filled rapidly. Families searched desperately among the dead and injured. Many victims were buried in local cemeteries around Cork and Kinsale, forever linking the tragedy of Lusitania with the Irish coast. Memorial services continue there to this day. International outrage followed swiftly. The sinking became one of the defining propaganda moments of the First World War and profoundly shifted public opinion, particularly in the United States. Although America would not formally enter the war until 1917, Lusitania altered how many viewed Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare campaign. Yet beyond the politics lies something far more enduring: the deeply human story. A child separated from parents in the confusion, passengers helping strangers into lifeboats, crewmen remaining at their posts, rescuers battling toward the scene from the Cork coast. The haunting image of a proud liner disappearing beneath calm blue water within sight of Ireland. Today, the wreck of Lusitania rests approximately 300 feet beneath the Celtic Sea, south of the old head of Kinsale. Over the decades, the site has become both a maritime grave and a place of fascination, research, and remembrance. Now, more than 111 years later, Lusitania still speaks to us. She reminds us of the vulnerability of civilian life during war, of how quickly normality can vanish, of courage and fear existing side by side, and of Ireland's enduring connection to the Atlantic and the stories carried upon it. On that bright May afternoon in 1915, the people aboard Lusitania could see the Irish coast. They were almost home. However, when it seemed that they were so close to safety, they were in fact at their greatest peril. We remember the Lusitania, her brave crew, and her passengers at this time of the 111th anniversary of that tragic event. And as I've mentioned before on the podcast, we actually have a piece of the Lusitania here at the Maritime Centre in Rosslare Harbour. Brass air vent number 312 was recovered by a local fishing vessel and is on display here at the centre. So history really can be felt and touched, even though that tragic event happened 111 years ago. And another point of note on that disaster: the U-boat that torpedoed the Lusitania was, as I mentioned, number U-20, and she sunk a total of 37 ships during the war, including the Cymric on the 8th of May 1916, and that just gives us an idea of how coldly effective these U-boats were at the time and the amount of destruction they caused. So once again, we remember the Lusitania and her victims 111 years on. Now it's time for our maritime words of the week. Now, one of the most familiar words at sea, and one still used every single day aboard ships and around the world, is the word galley. Today we think of it simply as the ship's kitchen, but like many maritime expressions, its origins stretch back centuries and tell us a story of how language evolved alongside seafaring itself. The term comes from the ancient and medieval galley, the long, narrow vessels that once dominated the Mediterranean. These ships were powered primarily by banks of oarsmen, often supported by sails, and were used for trade, exploration, and warfare by civilizations including the Greeks, the Romans, the Venetians, and the Ottomans. Now, life aboard those early galleys was cramped, hot, and physically demanding. Feeding large crews of rowers and sailors was essential, and the designated cooking area aboard the vessel gradually became associated with the name of the ship itself. Over time, the word galley stopped meaning only the vessel and became the accepted term for the onboard cooking space. Now, the linguistic trail is fascinating, and forgive my pronunciation here now. In Greek, it's Galea. In medieval Latin, it's Gallia. Old French is Galie, and eventually entering English as both galley, the vessel, and galley, the kitchen. Even as ship design evolved far beyond the old oared warships, the word still endured. Centuries later, sailors still refer to the kitchen as the galley, whether aboard a fishing boat, ferry, naval vessel, cargo ship, or luxury liner. And unlike a kitchen ashore, a galley is specially designed for survival at sea. Everything aboard must cope with movement, vibration, and heavy weather. Stoves are fitted with rails and gimbals to keep pots steady. Shelves often have retaining bars. Tables may have raised fiddle rails to stop plates sliding away. Storage spaces are tightly secured. Ventilation and fire prevention are critically important. Historically, the galley could also be one of the most dangerous parts of a wooden ship. Open flames aboard timber vessels created constant fire risk, so the ship's cook carried significant responsibility. In naval history, many devastating shipboard fires began in or near the galley area. Yet, despite the hard work and dangers, the galley has always held a special place in seafaring culture. Sailors will often tell you that morale aboard a ship can depend heavily on the quality of the food and the skill of the cook. On long voyages, the galley became more than a kitchen. It was a social hub, a warm refuge in bad weather, and often the heart of daily life at sea. The term even migrated ashore into other industries. Aircraft kitchens are still called galleys today, a direct borrowing from maritime tradition. So the next time you hear a sailor mention the galley, you're hearing a word that has travelled through thousands of years of maritime history. From the oared warships of the ancient Mediterranean to the ships and aircraft of the modern world. And that just about brings us to the end of episode 19 of Steady as She Goes. As always, thank you very much for listening and for continuing to support the podcast week after week. The feedback, the messages, the photographs, the stories and suggestions coming in from listeners all around Ireland and further afield really do help shape the programme and keep these maritime conversations going. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share the podcast with anybody who has an interest in ships, maritime history, ports, coastal life, or the sea in general. Every share and recommendation genuinely helps the podcast continue to grow. You can also keep up to date with the latest maritime news, stories, and podcast updates through our social media channels and by following the podcast online. Or even better, call in to us here at the Roster Harbour Maritime Heritage Centre on Saturdays from 12 to 4, where admission, of course, is completely free. So until next time, from me here on Steady as She Goes, and for all the crew at the Roster Harbour Maritime Heritage Centre, thanks for listening, stay safe wherever you are, and as always, fair winds, following seas, and steady as she goes.